Aprende acerca del ecosistema de forma fácil gracias a la aplicación de EasyA App. Seguramente algunos de los que estén aquí al día de hoy sabéis que empecé este canal simplemente porque quería enseñar acerca del mundo cripto, un poquito mis experiencias, lo que había hecho mal, y eso es lo que se enfocó en un principio del canal. Después empezamos con esto de Polkadot, algo que ya sabéis que desde mi perspectiva, desde mi punto de vista en ese momento, no ha cambiado. Tenía grandes ventajas sobre Ethereum, sobre todo con esto de la descentralización, y siempre me he preguntado quién estaría dispuesto a enseñar a gente acerca de esta tecnología que tenemos en blockchain, en Polkadot, que como muchos sabéis es una tecnología que no es muy fácil de entender, sobre todo para esas personas que vienen de las meme coins o que vienen en un momento puntual del mercado, que solo buscan que la especulación, ganar dinero, ¿no? Todo este rollo. Y un día dio la casualidad que conocí la aplicación de EasyA App y con suerte, gracias a este Polkadot Decode que se realizó en Bruselas, tuve la oportunidad de conocer tanto a Phil y Dom, que son los cofundadores de EasyA y que además están haciendo hackathons por universidades prestigiosas como es Harvard y Cambridge. Sinceramente me gusta mucho esa filosofía de construir con tu hermano, porque yo en mi caso personal también he tenido negocios con familia y sé lo bueno que puede llegar a ser. Así que chicos, os dejo con la entrevista donde nos explica un poco el futuro de la educación en Web3 y cuál es su rol en el ecosistema de Polkadot. Dicho todo esto, dentro de entrevista. So Phil, thank you for coming to the channel. You can present to the community what are you doing, which is your work.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Brian. I'm Phil, co-founder of EasyA. We're the biggest Web3 education app. We've recently launched our 180 Days of Polkadot, which we're rolling out on different parachains. And of course, we're right here at Polkadot Decoded, so there's no better place to share about it.
Why start application for teach to the people about crypto, and why not from other things?
That's a great question. So the problem is that right now, Web3 is this huge technology that's about to change the world, but it's way too hard to learn about it. So if you want to actually get started building on it, you need to download all of these different CLI tools. In short, it's going to take you hours and hours just to get started learning about it. With EasyA, we make it as simple as pushing a few buttons to get started. So that just like ordering an Uber, you can literally just push a button, you get a car. With EasyA, you push a button and you're already learning about Polkadot.
Yeah, and how start this idea? When start this idea, and why work with the universities too? For me, it's interesting to just explain for the communities.
Yeah, so we started EasyA almost 4 years ago now. And the vision really, as it comes into form today, was to make it simple for people to be able to learn about Web3. We started partnering with universities. I did my undergrad at the University of Cambridge in the UK. Okay. My co-founder Dom, who's also my brother, he was at UPenn, Wharton in the US. And so when we started EasyA and we wanted to get people using the app, we went back to those universities. So we started expanding through Cambridge to Oxford, to all the Russell Group universities, Dom over in the US, through Penn to the different Ivy League universities, because there's just so many smart people there. You know, a lot of young, smart talent building all these amazing startups. For example, Mark Zuckerberg, he was just a student at Harvard, he dropped out, founded Facebook. Sergey Brin, Larry Page, they were both students at Stanford before they founded Google. And that's exactly the type of person that we wanted to get into the EasyA app. But of course, today it's expanded beyond that. We have over 300 blockchain clubs that we partner with at different universities, but also people all over the world. So we have over 1 million users. And those people, exactly, yeah, and those people are from all walks of life. They're software engineers, they are students at universities, and they're also just people who are interested in learning.
I have a big question, an interesting question. You know that different countries have a different communities, different necessaries. Okay, Spanish community, maybe Latin America, we need this type of app. You want to expand to these countries that maybe they don't know about EasyA App. Which is the future in this case?
100%. So we started off in the UK, the US, fastest growing community right now out on the East Coast in the States. But we have a lot of organic growth, a lot of Spanish speaking communities. We've even seen people who are translating our content and posting that up. So that's been amazing to see. We want to be able to service them better as well, especially with it being on a mobile form factor. Mobile penetration in LATAM is very, very high, as you know, it is well documented, and people just have their phones on them all the time, right? So making it simple into that form factor is something that's ideally suited for those markets. I think that it's just a matter of time before we start going into those countries more and more.
Oh, amazing. I want to see EasyA App in Latin America.
Yeah, I want to see it. Hopefully for everybody who's watching, they can download it and try it out.
And why Polkadot? We know that Polkadot maybe it's not a easy blockchain for all the users. How you know Polkadot at the beginning, and why you start to teach about Polkadot?
That's a great question. And I think with Polkadot, you're right. It is not the easiest blockchain to get started with because it's different. It's not a layer 1, it's really a layer 0.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, that actually makes it more interesting because the developer surface area is massive. It means that as a developer, you're not just limited to launching smart contracts, you can launch your own blockchain too. And so if you're in Polkadot, you have access to this wide variety of opportunities. You can launch a smart contract on one of the smart contracts supporting parachains, let's say Astar or Moonbeam, or maybe soon to be with Plaza.
Yeah.
You can also build your own parachain, or you can even go into the networking layer as well, and you can start using things like XCM, so to pass messages in between these blockchains, and soon, of course, between Ethereum. So I think that from my perspective, it's actually one of the most exciting ecosystems, precisely because you can build so many different types. I think that you're right, we are still so early, and maybe in many respects in the past, over the past few years, it's been intimidating for developers. But I think that with a lot of new primitives that we have coming out in the Polkadot ecosystem that have been announced at Polkadot Decoded at this conference too, it's about to get a lot easier. We were just chatting with some of the guys over at Rogue, for example, with Pop Network and the Pop CLI. It's making it a lot easier. You can now spin up your own parachain within a few minutes using their CLI tools. Of course, like it's not a custom one, but out of the box, you can get started so much easier. So I think that over the next year or two, we're going to see a huge explosion in developers. Of course, we're bringing a huge number of developers. We have over 100,000 people who've now learned about Polkadot in the EasyA app. So when those people start filtering in and start building products at these hackathons that we're hosting, we have one coming up next weekend in London, another one at Harvard, and we're doing more every single month. I think that that's when we're going to see a huge number of new products being built in the ecosystem.
When is your next hackathon about Polkadot?
Great question. That's going to be on 20 to 21 July in London, and then the one after that on 27 to 28 at Harvard. So very soon.
Yeah. It's amazing because at the end you have like a different perspective from the ecosystem. You work with the community, with the app, and you work with the developers, with the hackathons.
Yes.
Okay, we can say that at Polkadot we have a little and big problem. That it's okay, we had the best technology maybe, but we hadn't a lot of users like Ethereum, or we hadn't maybe a DeFi attractive for attract the users. Which do you think that is the biggest problem of Polkadot, and how we can slow?
Something I think about a lot. I can tell you've thought about it a lot too. My personal perspective is that we need to start with the builders. I think that it's difficult for users to come to an ecosystem if they don't have anything to do when they get there. So even if we have, let's say that, for example, we had 1 million users come to Polkadot tomorrow from Ethereum, and for whatever reason they migrated over, and they're like, okay, well, what are we going to do? There are things for them to do. Of course, there are amazing apps that have been built out in the ecosystem, but there aren't necessarily enough, and there aren't necessarily enough to cater to each single one. So I think that really what we still need at this phase in Polkadot's journey is builders, and we see it with every other ecosystem that's launched that's been successful. They started building the dApps, they started that layer, and then the consumers were able to come. So I think that, especially gearing ourselves for the upcoming market cycles, I think that in this ecosystem, we need to have those builders building out those dApps. That's why we're focused so much on hackathons. You talked about our mission earlier. Our mission is to bring the next 1 billion people into Web3. We could have focused on the consumer side. The reason we chose to focus on the builders is because we know that we need those dApps built out first. Yeah. And once we have those, then users are able to come so much more easily. We've seen that with the announcements at Decoded too. We've got new apps that are built out that will bring new utility to the ecosystem, and that's what we're excited to see.
Which is the next futures about EasyA App? Because at the end you are collaborating with a lot of blockchains. Which is the next about Easy?
So coming up in the EasyA app, we have new parachains that are launching. So as part of 180 Days of Polkadot, which people are going to see when they download the EasyA app, we have recently launched new modules on Astar. We've got new modules coming up on Moonbeam. New module launched just earlier this week on Unique Network as well. So those are the next ones that are launching, and we have a whole new array, some newer parachains as well. For example, Polymech. We're going to announce that that's coming out in the EasyA app soon. So a ton of different things and a ton of excitement for users too.
So, Phil, thank you very much for being at the channel. You want to say something else to the community?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you very much, Brian, for having me on. The work that you're doing in the community is amazing. And I've seen your content that you're producing as well. For anybody in the community who wants to get started, download the EasyA app on the Google Play Store or on iOS. It'll be the best place for you to get started in the EasyA ecosystem, obviously in Polkadot ecosystem, just to get started for the first time. And if you want to connect, make sure that you follow us at EasyA_app on Twitter. And of course, make sure that you drop a subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to Brian. This guy is going to be a big guy on YouTube soon.
I want to. Thank you very much.
Cool, awesome. Thanks so much, Brian, for your time.
Y bueno, señores, esta es la entrevista que hemos tenido con Phil en este caso. Dom nos estaba haciendo algunas fotitos que estaréis viendo actualmente por la pantalla. Como ya veis, nos está contando algo, bueno, que ya han realizado, como es el caso del hackathon este que van a hacer en Londres. Me gusta mucho el trabajo que están haciendo. Me gustaría animarles a que cogieran el evento de Sub-Zero y ellos pudieran realizarlo, porque me parece bastante interesante que puedan traer a esas mentes de Web 2 que están bastante frescas, que seguramente tengan esa ambición, que acaban de salir de la universidad, que están en la universidad conforme estén, ¿no? Pero que esas mentes jóvenes y que puedan construir en Web 3 y que por consecuencia lleguen a construir dentro de Polkadot, sería algo genial. Y estos chicos al final tienen como esa llave para poder también impulsar de esta forma el ecosistema. Dicho todo esto, gente, no olvides dejarte tu super like, déjame algún comentario acerca de lo que te ha parecido esta entrevista, qué te gustaría ver en próximas entrevistas. Dicho todo esto, muchas gracias y nos vemos en el próximo vídeo.